The October morning light filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Brilliant Salon like liquid gold, touching everything it reached with a promise of transformation. Isabella Morgan stood at her station on Madison Avenue, her reflection caught in the ornate mirror before her, and for just a moment, she allowed herself to feel the weight of everything she had built. At 35, Bella possessed the kind of beauty that made people pause mid-sentence. Her skin, rich and dark as expensive chocolate, seemed to glow with an inner radiance that no amount of makeup could replicate. Her natural hair, styled in an elegant twist that showcased her artistry, framed features that spoke of strength earned through struggle. She wore a fitted emerald dress that hugged curves she had learned to celebrate, paired with the signature gold hoops that had become her trademark among Manhattan's elite. The salon hummed with the quiet efficiency of a well-orchestrated performance. Crystal fixtures cast warm pools of light over white marble surfaces. The scent of high-end hair products mingled with fresh orchids that adorned every station. This was her kingdom, built from nothing but determination and a settlement check from a discrimination lawsuit that had nearly broken her spirit before it freed her. Mrs. Ashford settled into Bella's chair with the practiced ease of a woman accustomed to being catered to. Old money, the kind that whispered rather than shouted, the kind that had taken Bella years to win over. "My dear, you simply must work your magic," Mrs. Ashford said, her voice carrying the refined accent of Connecticut boarding schools. "The Met after party is tomorrow, and I refuse to look anything less than spectacular." Bella's hands moved through the older woman's silver hair with the confidence of someone who had transformed this ritual into an art form. Her fingers knew exactly where to place each pin, how to coax volume from thinning strands, how to create the illusion of effortless elegance that took hours to achieve. "Beauty is never about changing who you are, Mrs. Ashford," Bella said, her voice warm and genuine. "It's about revealing the queen you've always been." This was why they came to her. Not just for the skill, though that was exceptional. They came because in Bella's chair, every woman became royalty. She had built her reputation on this philosophy, on making others feel seen and valued in a world that often overlooked them. But as her phone buzzed on the counter, Bella felt that familiar hollow ache in her chest. The screen lit up with a text from her husband. "Working late again. Don't wait up. 3 nights this week." She counted them now, kept a mental tally of his absences the way other women counted blessings. Jordan Hayes, her husband of 6 years, the man who had once looked at her like she hung the moon, now communicated primarily through brief texts that carried all the warmth of a business memo. The day passed in a blur of appointments and consultations. Bella moved through her schedule with practiced grace, listening to her clients' stories, their triumphs and heartbreaks, offering not just beauty treatments, but genuine human connection. This gift for making others feel valued had been the secret to her success. She had turned brilliance from a dream into Manhattan's most sought-after salon in just 3 years. Grace Washington, her senior stylist and closest friend at the salon, caught her eye as the afternoon light began to soften. Grace was 52 with silver streaks in her natural hair that she wore like a crown and eyes that missed nothing. "You doing okay, honey?" Grace asked quietly, her voice pitched low enough that clients wouldn't hear. Bella smiled, the expression automatic and hollow. "Just tired." Grace's look said she knew better, but she didn't push. That was Grace's way. She waited until people were ready to talk, and when they were, she listened without judgment. As the last client left and the evening's shadows stretched long across Madison Avenue, Bella found herself standing at the window, watching couples stroll hand in hand below. She pressed her palm against the cool glass, remembering when she and Jordan used to walk these same streets, planning their future together, dreaming out loud about the life they would build. When had that stopped? When had conversations become perfunctory exchanges about schedules and obligations? When had her husband become a stranger who happened to share her last name? The drive home to their Central Park West penthouse felt longer than usual. Bella's hands gripped the steering wheel of her Mercedes, her mind replaying the day's interactions, searching for the moment when her own smile had felt genuine rather than painted on. Their building rose into the Manhattan skyline like a monument to success. Doormen in crisp uniforms, marble lobbies, elevators that whispered rather than creaked. Jordan had insisted on this address, this particular building, this specific apartment that screamed achievement to anyone who understood New York real estate. The penthouse was exactly as she had left it that morning, all glass and steel and minimalist furniture chosen by Jordan's interior designer. Bella's attempts to add warmth, color, personality had been politely but firmly redirected to their bedroom. This was his space, his aesthetic, his vision of what success should look like. She reheated the dinner she had prepared that morning, ate alone at the kitchen island, and tried not to count how many times she had done this in the past month. The food tasted like obligation. Everything felt like obligation now. Jordan's key turned in the lock at 11:47. Bella had been watching the clock, hating herself for watching, unable to stop. She heard his footsteps on the hardwood floor, the rustle of his coat being hung in the closet, the familiar sounds of her husband coming home. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, tall and undeniably handsome even in his exhaustion. At 38, Jordan Hayes carried success well. His tailored suit emphasized broad shoulders. His dark skin glowed with the health that came from expensive gym memberships and personal trainers. He looked like the kind of man who graced magazine covers, who gave TED Talks, who made things happen. "You're still awake," he observed, loosening his tie with practiced efficiency. "Long day at the salon," Bella replied, though she knew he wouldn't ask for details. He never did anymore. Jordan moved to the refrigerator, his movements economical, distant. "Productive meeting. The IPO is on track for December. Should increase our net worth by 40 million. The word hung in the air between them, hollow despite its inclusive promise. When was the last time anything had truly been theirs together? "That's wonderful," Bella said, meaning it and hating that she had to mean it alone. Jordan barely glanced at her as he grabbed a bottle of water. "I'm exhausted, going to shower and head to bed." He was gone before she could respond, leaving her alone in the kitchen that had never felt like hers, in the apartment that had never felt like home, in the marriage that had somehow become a carefully maintained illusion. Bella sat in the silence, listening to the shower run, and wondered when she had stopped fighting for something that might have already been lost. The weekend arrived with the weight of forced normalcy. Jordan was home on Saturday morning, a rare occurrence that should have felt like a gift, but instead carried the tension of two actors unsure of their lines. He sat in his home office, door closed, the space that had always been off limits to her. Bella knocked gently, carrying coffee she had made with the specific ratio of cream and sugar he preferred. Small gestures. She still made them, even as they felt increasingly futile. Jordan looked up from his laptop, his expression briefly annoyed before smoothing into something more neutral. His phone lay face down on the desk. She noticed because he never used to hide his screen. "Thank you," he said, taking the coffee without meeting her eyes. Bella lingered in the doorway. "I was thinking we could go to the farmer's market, maybe cook dinner together tonight." "I have work to finish," Jordan replied, already turning back to his computer. "This IPO timing is critical." She tried again. "Jordan, we haven't spent real time together in weeks." His sigh carried the weight of patience stretched thin. "Bella, you have your salon. Why do you need to be everywhere? Do everything. Can't you just be content with what we have?" The words landed like small cuts, precise and painful. He had been making comments like this for months now, subtle suggestions that her ambitions were excessive, that her success needed tempering, that she should want less, be less, take up less space in the world. "I just want time with my husband," she said quietly, "and I need to work." Jordan's tone carried finality. "Not everyone can make their own schedule, Bella." She left him alone, closing the door on his world that had somehow become separate from hers. In the bedroom, she changed into leggings and a hoodie, preparing for a solo trip to the market. As she reached for her jacket, she felt something crinkle in Jordan's suit pocket. The jacket needed dry cleaning. She had been meaning to take it. These small domestic tasks that kept a household running. The invisible labor that Jordan never noticed or acknowledged. The receipt slipped from the pocket like an accusation. Cartier, the name alone made her hands still. $52,000. Date stamped 2 weeks ago. Bella's mind raced through every possible explanation. Their anniversary was next month. Maybe he had planned ahead. Maybe this was a surprise. Maybe there was a reasonable explanation for why her husband had spent $52,000 on jewelry she had never received. But even as she tried to rationalize, a cold certainty settled in her stomach. The text messages, the late nights, the distance, the way he guarded his phone, the subtle criticisms designed to make her question herself. She sat on the edge of their bed, the receipt trembling in her hands, and wondered how long she had been willfully blind to what she hadn't wanted to see. The following Tuesday, with Jordan supposedly in San Francisco for a tech conference, Bella found herself in his home office. She hadn't intended to snoop. She had been looking for tax documents their accountant needed, files Jordan usually kept meticulously organized. The office was unlocked. Unusual. Jordan was obsessive about his privacy, about keeping this space sacred and separate. But today, in his hurry to catch his flight, he had been careless. The filing cabinet drawer opened easily. Bella rifled through folders labeled with the mundane details of successful lives: property insurance, investment statements, business contracts, and then a folder simply marked personal. Her hands shook as she pulled it free. Inside, credit card statements dating back 18 months. She had never seen these before. They had separate accounts for daily expenses, but Jordan managed their joint investments, their shared obligations. Bella spread the statements across his desk, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. The charges told a story she hadn't wanted to read. The St. Regis Hotel, 12 separate bookings over 18 months. While Jordan was supposedly home, supposedly in their bed, supposedly her husband. Le Bernardin, $847 for dinner. Jordan claimed to hate French food. They had never been there together. Cartier, multiple purchases totaling $89,000 over 6 months. She had received nothing. Not for her birthday, not for their anniversary, nothing. Tiffany and Company, $47,000, 3 weeks ago. Her vision blurred. The numbers swam before her eyes like accusations. And then, at the bottom of the most recent statement, a wire transfer that made her blood run cold. $15,000. Payee, M. Pierce. Memo, apartment deposit. Bella sat in Jordan's leather chair, surrounded by evidence of a betrayal so methodical, so sustained, that it took her breath away. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a double life, carefully constructed and maintained while she had blamed herself for the distance in their marriage. She thought of the nights she had lain awake, wondering what she had done wrong. The times she had tried to initiate intimacy only to be rebuffed. The constant criticism of her ambitions, her business, her dreams. All of it designed to keep her small, to keep her doubtful, to keep her from seeing what was happening right in front of her. 2 years. The pattern went back nearly 2 years. 22 months of lies while she had loved him completely, trusted him implicitly, defended him to friends who had gently suggested something seemed off. Bella's hands moved mechanically, photographing every statement, every damning charge. Evidence. She would need evidence. Because whatever happened next, whatever she decided to do, she would not let Jordan gasoline her into doubting her own reality. Her phone buzzed, a text from Jordan. Landing soon. Miss you. The casual intimacy of the message, offered so easily while he was living an entirely separate life, made something crack inside her chest, not her heart breaking. That would come later. This was something colder, sharper. This was the sound of illusions shattering. Bella carefully returned everything to its place, closed the filing cabinet, left the office exactly as she had found it. She would not confront him unprepared. She would not give him the opportunity to talk his way out of this with charm and excuses, and the magnetic charisma that had made her fall in love with him in the first place. She drove to Brilliance on autopilot, the credit card statements burning in her purse like stolen fire. The salon was quiet at 2 in the afternoon, between the lunch rush and evening appointments. Grace took one look at her face and steered her into the back office. What happened? Grace's voice was gentle but firm. And don't tell me you're fine. Bella pulled out the statements, spread them across the desk, and watched Grace's expression shift from concern to fury. That son of a... Grace caught herself, took a deep breath. How long? Almost 2 years. Bella's voice sounded strange to her own ears, distant, clinical, like she was discussing someone else's tragedy. Grace pulled her into a fierce hug. What do you need? What can I do? I need proof, Bella said into Grace's shoulder. I need to know everything before I do anything. You need a private investigator, Grace said. And honey, I know just the person. By the time Bella left the salon that evening, she had an appointment scheduled for the following morning with Sarah Blackwood of Blackwood and Associates. The retainer was $5,000. Bella paid it from her business account without hesitation. Some things were worth any price. That night, Jordan came home at a reasonable hour for once, bearing flowers. The gesture felt like guilt wearing a disguise. He smiled at her, kissed her cheek, asked about her day with what might have been genuine interest if she hadn't known better. Bella played her role, smiled back, accepted the flowers, pretended everything was normal. It was perhaps the greatest performance of her life. She lay awake long after Jordan fell asleep beside her, staring at the ceiling, planning her next moves with a clarity born of betrayal. She had built a successful business from nothing. She had survived discrimination, doubt, and every obstacle that had been placed in her path. She would survive this too, but she would not survive it quietly. She would not shrink herself to accommodate someone else's lies. She would not accept crumbs of affection from a man who had given his heart elsewhere while expecting her to be grateful for whatever remained. The woman who had discovered those credit card statements was not the same woman who would confront her husband. That woman was dead. In her place, something harder, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous was being born. A queen who had forgotten her crown was remembering how to wear it. And when she did, kingdoms would fall. Sarah Blackwood's office occupied a corner suite in a Wall Street building that spoke of old money and older secrets. The waiting room was decorated in shades of cream and chrome, designed to soothe the kind of clients who came seeking truths they already suspected but needed confirmed. Bella sat with perfect posture, her hands folded in her lap, looking every inch the successful businesswoman she was. She wore a black sheath dress and her signature gold hoops, armor disguised as elegance. Mrs. Hayes, Sarah Blackwood emerged from an inner office extending a hand. She was perhaps 45, black, with natural hair styled in elegant locks and eyes that had seen every variation of human betrayal. Thank you for coming. The office was exactly what Bella expected. Professional, discreet, walls lined with certificates and commendations from a career spent uncovering uncomfortable truths. Sarah gestured to a leather chair across from her desk. I understand you have concerns about your marriage. Bella pulled out the photographed credit card statements, laid them on the desk with the same precision she used when styling hair. I believe my husband has been having an affair for almost 2 years. I need proof. Sarah studied the documents with the practiced eye of someone who had seen this story play out 1,000 times before. Her expression remained neutral, professional, but something in her eyes softened slightly. This is substantial, circumstantial evidence, Sarah said. With your permission, I can have definitive answers within a week. What do you need from me? Bella's voice was steady. She had cried all her tears the night before. Today was about action. Access to any shared accounts, his schedule, vehicle information if you have it, and any other patterns you've noticed. Sarah pulled out a legal pad. And Mrs. Hayes, I need to ask, are you prepared for what I might find? Bella met her eyes without flinching. I already know what you're going to find. I just need proof. They spent the next hour going through details. Jordan's habits, his claimed schedule versus his actual movements, the names and numbers Bella had managed to collect. Sarah took notes with the efficiency of someone assembling a case rather than documenting heartbreak. 1 week, Sarah confirmed as Bella prepared to leave. Continue your normal routine. Don't let him suspect anything has changed. He won't, Bella said with certainty. He's been underestimating me for years. The week that followed was an exercise in controlled performance. Bella went to work, smiled at clients, managed her staff, expanded her business plans, all while maintaining the facade of a marriage for Jordan's benefit. Grace watched her like a hawk, ready to catch her if she fell. But Bella didn't fall. She simply became more focused, more driven, channeling her pain into productivity with an intensity that both impressed and worried her friend. Thursday evening, as Bella was closing the salon, she heard Jordan's voice through the bathroom door of their penthouse. She had come home early, unusual for her, and found him on a call he thought was private. His voice carried that warm intimacy she hadn't heard directed at her in years. I miss you too, baby. This weekend, I promise. Just you and me. Bella stood frozen in the hallway, listening to her husband speak to another woman with the tenderness he had once reserved for her. The words were muffled, but the tone was unmistakable. Love, or what passed for it when spoken by a man who had mastered deception. She walked away before she could hear more, went to the kitchen, and poured herself a glass of wine with hands that barely trembled. The anger that filled her was cold and clarifying. This was not the hot rage of discovery, but the ice-cold fury of confirmation. Saturday came and went, Sunday crawled by, Monday morning arrived like a reprieve. Sarah Blackwood called at 9:30, her voice carrying the weight of completed work. Mrs. Hayes, I have your report. Can you come to my office this morning? Tell me now, Bella said. She was alone in her salon, having arrived early specifically to take this call in private. I need to know. Not over the phone. Sarah's tone was gentle but firm. This conversation needs to happen in person. Can you be here at 10? Bella looked at her reflection in the salon mirror. The woman looking back at her was about to have her worst suspicions confirmed, about to see in black and white the extent of her husband's betrayal. That woman deserved to face the truth with dignity. I'll be there, Bella said. The drive to Sarah's office passed in a blur of Manhattan traffic and racing thoughts. Bella parked in the garage beneath the building, took the elevator up, and walked into the reception area with the bearing of someone facing execution with grace. Sarah was waiting. The manila envelope on her desk was thick with documentation. Bella could see edges of photographs peeking out. "Sit down," Sarah said softly. It was not a request. Bella sat, folded her hands, lifted her chin, ready. Sarah pulled the first photograph from the envelope and slid it across the desk. Jordan and a woman, blonde and petite, kissing outside the St. Regis. The image was crystal clear, time-stamped, undeniable. "Her name is Madison Pierce," Sarah began. "She's 28 years old, works as a marketing director for a luxury fashion brand called Luxe. Comes from old money, Boston family. Her father owns a shipping company." More photographs followed. Jordan and Madison holding hands in Bryant Park, feeding each other dessert at Le Bernardin. Madison wearing a Cartier bracelet that caught the light like an accusation. Bella stared at each image, memorizing the face of the woman who had been sharing her husband. Madison Pierce was beautiful in that effortless way that came from generations of privilege. Blonde hair perfectly styled, skin that had never known the weight of discrimination or doubt. Everything Bella was not. "The affair began 22 months ago at an industry mixer," Sarah continued, her voice clinical. "They've been consistent since then. He pays her rent, $4,200 a month for an apartment in Chelsea, shopping allowances, weekend trips when you think he's traveling for business." Sarah pulled out property documents. "Your husband is under contract for a townhouse in Tribeca, $3.2 million. Closing is scheduled for 5 weeks from now." The room tilted slightly. Bella gripped the arms of her chair. "There's more." Sarah's expression was sympathetic but steady. "3 weeks ago, your husband purchased an engagement ring from Tiffany & Company. 2.5 carats, $47,000. The final photograph showed Madison's left hand, the diamond catching light, her smile radiant with the confidence of a woman who believed she had won. Bella's voice, when she finally spoke, was barely a whisper. "He's engaged to her." "Yes." Sarah pulled out one more document. This was sent last week. It was an email printed and highlighted. "From Jordan to Madison." The words blurred and sharpened as Bella forced herself to read. "Baby, after the IPO closes on December 15th, I'm telling Bella I want a divorce. We can be together openly. Our new house, our new life. I love you. December 15th. 6 weeks away." Jordan had already scheduled the destruction of their marriage, had marked it on his calendar like any other business transaction. Bella sat in the leather chair surrounded by evidence of betrayal so complete, so methodical, that it took her breath away. This wasn't passion. This wasn't a mistake. This was cold calculation. He had been building a new life while systematically dismantling hers, all while making her feel like the problem, like her ambitions were too much, like she was asking for too much by simply wanting her own husband to love her. "Mrs. Hayes," Sarah's voice cut through the roaring in Bella's ears. "Do you have somewhere safe you can stay?" Sometimes when confronted, people can become volatile. Bella looked up, meeting Sarah's concerned gaze. "Jordan won't hurt me. He's too worried about his image for anything that messy." She gathered the photographs and documents with hands that were remarkably steady. "Send me your final invoice. And Sarah, thank you for the truth." The parking garage was empty and echoing. Bella sat in her Mercedes, surrounded by concrete and shadows, and let herself break. The sounds that came from her throat were animal, raw, years of suppressed hurt and ignored instincts finally given voice. She screamed until her voice went hoarse. She pounded the steering wheel until her hands ached. She cried until no more tears would come. And then, in the silence that followed, something shifted. Bella looked at herself in the rearview mirror. Her makeup was destroyed. Her eyes were swollen. She looked like someone who had been through a war, and she had. A war she hadn't known she was fighting until it was almost lost. But almost was not the same as completely. Almost still left room for action. "You are Isabella Morgan," she said to her reflection. "You survived your father leaving when you were 10. You survived your mother's cancer. You survived that discrimination lawsuit that almost destroyed you. You built a business from nothing. You are not going to let Jordan Hayes break you." Her voice grew stronger with each word. "You are not going to beg. You are not going to shrink yourself. You are not going to accept this." She started the car, pulled out of the garage, and drove not toward home but toward brilliance, toward her salon, toward the kingdom she had built with her own hands, The one thing in her life that was completely, entirely hers. Grace took one look at her and pulled her into the back office without a word. Bella showed her everything, every photograph, every document, the email that laid out Jordan's timeline for discarding her like an outdated business strategy. Grace's response was immediate and fierce. That worthless piece of, I will end him. Bella, I swear to God, I will destroy that man. No, Bella said, her voice gaining strength. I will. She spent 2 hours in that office, not crying but planning. Grace brought her water, tissues, and the kind of steady presence that only came from a friend who had weathered her own storms. What do you need? Grace asked finally. Time, Bella replied. I need time to prepare, to get my ducks in a row, to make sure when I confront him, he has nowhere to run and no excuses left to hide behind. When? Bella pulled out her phone and checked the calendar. Jordan was returning from his fake San Francisco trip tomorrow evening. Tomorrow night. I confront him tomorrow night. Grace nodded, respect and concern warring in her expression. You call me if you need anything. Anything at all. That evening, Bella did something she hadn't done in months. She made herself an elaborate dinner, opened an expensive bottle of wine, and sat in her penthouse eating slowly, savoring each bite. She put on music Jordan hated, danced in the living room, and reclaimed space in the apartment that had never truly felt like home. She went through his closet, his drawers, his bathroom, not snooping now but observing, seeing with new eyes all the ways he had separated his life from hers. The cologne she had never smelled on him because he showered before coming home. The nice suits he claimed were for client meetings. The careful grooming that wasn't for her benefit. In their bedroom, Bella laid out the evidence on the bed, photographs arranged in chronological order, credit card statements organized by date, property documents centered, the email printed and highlighted, a timeline of betrayal displayed like an art installation. She showered, styled her hair with the same care she gave her most important clients, and dressed in a sleek black dress that made her look powerful and untouchable. War paint disguised as elegance. Then she sat in the living room and waited. Jordan's flight landed at 5. Traffic from the airport would take an hour. She had time. Bella poured herself wine and thought about the woman she had been 6 years ago, walking down the aisle in a Vera Wang gown, believing in forever. That woman had been so hopeful, so certain that love conquered all. She had believed Jordan when he called her his queen, his everything, his forever. That woman was dead now. In her place sat someone harder, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous. The key turned in the lock at 6:23. Bella heard Jordan's familiar footsteps, the sound of his briefcase hitting the floor, his jacket being hung in the closet, the mundane sounds of a man coming home, unaware that the life he knew was about to implode. Bella? His voice carried through the apartment. You home? She took a sip of her wine, set the glass down with deliberate care, and stood. In the living room, Jordan. He appeared in the doorway, handsome in his travel clothes, his smile easy and false. Hey, you're dressed up. What's the occasion? Bella gestured to the dining table where she had carefully arranged the evidence of his betrayal. Come look at what I found. Jordan's steps slowed as he approached the table. She watched his face, saw the exact moment comprehension dawned. The smile died. The color drained. His eyes widened as he took in the photographs, the statements, the undeniable proof of his double life. Bella. His voice cracked on her name. I can explain. Can you? She was proud of how steady her voice remained. Can you explain 22 months of lying to my face? Can you explain buying her a $3.2 million house with our money? He sat down heavily, one hand reaching for the table as if he needed support. How did you? Private investigator. Took her 1 week to uncover what you've been hiding for almost 2 years. Bella moved closer, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. You made me feel crazy, Jordan. Like I was imagining the distance. Like I was asking too much by wanting my own husband to love me. She picked up the photograph of Madison wearing the engagement ring, held it up for him to see. You're engaged to another woman, while still married to me. Jordan's hand scrubbed over his face. The gesture might have moved her once. Now it just looked like the performance it was. Bella placed the email on top of the other evidence. December 15th. That was your timeline for telling me? His silence was answer enough. How long were you going to let me believe our marriage was real? Her voice rose despite her best efforts to remain controlled. How many more months of making me feel worthless while you built a whole new life with someone else? It wasn't supposed to happen this way, Jordan said finally, his voice hollow. Bella's laugh was bitter, sharp. How was it supposed to happen? You planned to blindside me with divorce papers after 2 years of gaslighting me into thinking I was the problem? She paced the living room, energy crackling through her like electricity. I blame myself, Jordan. Every time you came home late, every time you rejected me, every time you criticized my business, my dreams, my ambitions. I thought I wasn't enough. I thought I needed to be smaller, quieter, less successful to keep you. Bella, please. Jordan stood, reached for her. She stepped back sharply. Don't touch me. Don't you dare touch me. The hurt in his eyes might have been genuine. She didn't care anymore. Tell me why, she demanded. Tell me why you threw away 6 years of marriage. Tell me why Madison Pierce was worth destroying everything we built. Jordan sank back into his chair, and for the first time since she had known him, he looked small. I met her at the Tech Innovation Summit 22 months ago. She was easy to talk to. She didn't make me feel inadequate, Bella supplied when he trailed off. Like you weren't enough, like you needed to compete. His silence confirmed it. Your success threatened you, Bella continued, the pieces falling into place with cruel clarity. Every time brilliance grew, every time I booked another high-profile client, every time someone praised my work, you felt smaller. So you found someone who made you feel big again. She doesn't challenge me, Jordan admitted quietly. She just accepts. She's white, Bella said flatly. Old money, from Boston. Everything your parents wanted you to marry. Everything I'm not. Jordan's head snapped up. This isn't about race. Like hell it isn't. Bella's voice was cold fury. Madison Pierce from Boston, old money. Blonde, white, acceptable. You think I don't see it? Your parents never approved of me. The girl from the Bronx who had the audacity to be successful. Who wouldn't play small to make you comfortable. That's not fair, Jordan protested weakly. What's not fair is you making me feel like I was too much, when the real problem is that you're not enough. Bella stood over him, powerful in her pain. You wanted me when I was building myself up, when I needed you. But the moment I didn't need you anymore, the moment I became your equal, you couldn't handle it. She picked up the property documents. A $3 million house. When were you planning to move in? Before or after you divorced me? After the IPO, Gwen, Jordan whispered. I was going to wait until after the IPO. So you could take your $40 million and start fresh with Madison in your new house, leaving me with what exactly? I wasn't going to leave you with nothing, Bella. I was going to be fair. Her laugh was hollow. Fair. You spent almost $100,000 on another woman while I was trying to save our marriage. You bought her jewelry, paid her rent, took her on vacations, all while telling me I should be content with less. But sure, you were going to be fair. Bella walked to the window, looked out over Central Park, and felt the last threads of her old life falling away. The woman who had loved Jordan Hayes, who had believed in their future, who had been willing to compromise herself to save them, was gone. I want a divorce, she said, her voice clear and final. Bella, wait. Can't we talk about this? Try counseling. She turned to face him, and the look in her eyes made him flinch. Counseling? You're engaged to another woman. You bought her a house. What exactly would we counsel? I'll call it off with Madison, he said desperately. I'll cancel the house purchase. Just give me another chance. You don't understand. Bella's voice was almost pitying. I don't want you anymore. The words landed like blows. Jordan stood, tried to close the distance between them, but she held up a hand that stopped him cold. For 2 years I've been starving for scraps of your attention, she continued. Do you know what that does to a woman? I started believing I wasn't enough, that I needed to be less to keep you. But the problem was never me. It was you. She moved toward the bedroom, her spine straight, her head high. I want you out of this apartment by Friday. My lawyer will contact you Monday. This is our home, Bella. You can't just kick me out. She turned and her smile was sharp enough to cut. Actually, I can. Check the deed. I bought this apartment with my settlement money from that discrimination lawsuit. The one you said I should let go. The one that funded my dreams while you were embarrassed by the publicity. Your name isn't on it. Jordan's face went slack. The post-nup you had me sign last year, that you barely read because you were too busy hiding your affair. It protects my business in this property. You were so focused on your secrets, you forgot to protect your assets. Bella walked to the bedroom, and before she closed the door, she delivered her final words. Enjoy your new life with Madison, Jordan. You deserve each other. The lock clicking into place sounded like punctuation. On the other side of the door, Bella pressed her back against the wood and let herself slide to the floor. The tears came again, but different this time. Not the shocked grief of discovery, but the cleansing pain of transformation. She had loved Jordan Hayes completely. She had given him 6 years of her life, her trust, her faith in their future. He had taken all of it and spent it on someone else while making her feel like asking for love was demanding too much. But that was over now. The illusion was shattered. The lies were exposed. And from the ashes of her broken marriage, something new was being born. Isabella Morgan had forgotten she was a queen. She had let someone else's insecurity make her doubt her crown. But queens didn't beg for recognition. They created their own kingdoms, and she had already built hers. Tomorrow she would call Catherine Chen, the best divorce attorney in Manhattan. She would protect her business, her assets, everything she had built with her own hands. She would make sure Jordan understood that betraying her came with consequences. But tonight, alone in the bedroom of an apartment that was solely hers, Bella let herself mourn. Not for Jordan, but for the woman she had been when she believed in forever. That woman deserved to be grieved. By the time dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the city in shades of gold and promise, Isabella Morgan had cried her last tear over Jordan Hayes. She had loved him. She had lost him. And now she was done. She stood at the window, watching the city wake up, and felt something settling in her chest. Not happiness, not yet, but possibility. The knowledge that she was still standing, still strong, still herself. A queen who had temporarily forgotten her crown was remembering how to wear it. And when she walked out into the world again, heads would turn, not because she was broken, but because she was magnificent. The unraveling was complete. The transformation had begun, and New York City had no idea what was coming. Wednesday morning arrived with the kind of clarity that only comes after the worst has already happened. Bella woke to the sound of zippers and suitcases, the mundane soundtrack of a life being dismantled. She had emerged from the bedroom at 6, her makeup flawless, her dress impeccable. If Jordan wanted to see her broken, he would be disappointed. He moved through the penthouse like a ghost, packing his expensive suits, his handmade shoes, all the trappings of success that had never been able to fill whatever hollow space existed inside him. The silence between them was complete. There was nothing left to say. Jordan paused at the door, his hand on the handle, his mouth opening as if to speak. Bella watched from her position by the window, arms crossed, her back straight as a blade. Bella, I truly am sorry, for what it's worth. She didn't turn to face him. Her voice, when it came, was cold as winter. It's worth nothing, Jordan. Words are cheap. Your actions showed me exactly who you are. Where will I go? Now she did turn, and the look in her eyes made him flinch. Madison's apartment, your new townhouse, the St. Regis, I don't care. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like the end of everything and the beginning of something else. Bella stood alone in the apartment that was finally completely hers and allowed herself exactly 5 minutes of weakness. She sank onto the couch, head in her hands, and let the enormity of it wash over her. Then she stood, wiped her eyes, and got ready for work. Queens didn't have the luxury of falling apart. They had kingdoms to run. Friday afternoon found Bella in the corner office of Catherine Chen, Manhattan's most feared divorce attorney. Catherine's reputation preceded her like a weapon. She was 52, Chinese-American, with silver-streaked hair she wore in a severe bun, and eyes that missed nothing. Her office walls were lined with legal degrees and framed newspaper articles about cases she had won, each one a testament to her brilliance. Mrs. Hayes, Catherine said, her voice crisp and professional, I've reviewed the evidence you sent. You have significant leverage here. The conference table between them was covered with documentation. Every photograph, every credit card statement, every piece of proof of Jordan's systematic betrayal. Your husband used marital funds to support his affair, Catherine continued, making notes with a fountain pen that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. The apartment he pays for, the jewelry, the vacations, that's dissipation of marital assets. It strengthens your position considerably. Bella sat with perfect posture, her hands folded in her lap. What am I entitled to? Catherine's smile was sharp. Given that you owned the apartment before marriage and the post-nuptial agreement he signed protects your business, we're looking at division of investment accounts in his company stock. His IPO is scheduled for 6 weeks from now. That $40 million payout, you're entitled to a significant portion. How much? I'm going to push for 40%. $16 million, plus he covers all legal fees. Catherine looked up from her notes. He'll fight it. His lawyers will argue that the business was his alone, that you're not entitled to his success. Bella's laugh was hollow. He spent 100,000 of our money on his mistress while telling me I should be content with less. But sure, let's talk about entitlement. There's something else you should know. Catherine's expression grew serious. Jordan comes from money. His family has connections. Expect them to wage war in the press. They'll try to paint you as opportunistic, difficult, a gold digger who trapped their son. Let them try. Bella's voice was steel wrapped in silk. I have the truth on my side. Catherine's respect was visible. Then let's get you what you're owed. The paperwork was filed by Monday morning. By Monday afternoon, Jordan's attorney had already called, threatening and blustering about how ugly things could get. Catherine's response had been succinct and devastating. We have photographs. We have financial records. We have evidence of adultery and dissipation of assets. How ugly do you want this to be? Bella threw herself into brilliance with an intensity that both impressed and worried Grace. The salon had never been busier. Word had spread through Manhattan's elite circles about Bella's separation, and instead of the scandal Jordan's family had hoped for, something unexpected happened. Women rallied to her. Every appointment became a quiet act of solidarity. Mrs. Ashford, who had known about Jordan's affair for months, but hadn't wanted to be the bearer of bad news, squeezed Bella's hand and said, "Divorcing him was the smartest decision you could make. He never deserved you." The other clients echoed similar sentiments. They admired her strength. They respected her refusal to be diminished, and they voted with their wallets. Brilliance's revenue didn't decrease. It increased by 25%. Grace found Bella in the back office one evening poring over expansion plans she had shelved months ago when Jordan had dismissed them as too ambitious. "You're really doing this," Grace observed, settling into the chair across from her. "Opening new locations." "I'm really doing this." Bella looked up, and Grace saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Fire, purpose. The spark of a woman who had remembered who she was before someone tried to make her smaller. "Jordan spent years telling me to be content with what I had, to stop reaching for more. I'm done being content." The plans spread across the desk were ambitious. A second location in Harlem, focused on natural hair care and community outreach. A third in downtown Brooklyn, catering to the artistic demographic there. And something else, something bigger. "Brilliance Academy," Grace read aloud. "A training program? 6 months, comprehensive, for women who can't afford traditional cosmetology school." Bella's voice carried conviction. "We provide the training, the supplies, the certification. They graduate ready to work." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Bella, baby, this is beautiful. I built this business from a discrimination settlement. Money I got because someone tried to tell me I didn't belong." Bella's smile was fierce. "Now I'm going to use it to lift up other women who've been told the same thing." They spent the next 3 weeks in a whirlwind of business planning. Bella pitched to investors with the confidence of someone who had nothing left to lose and everything to prove. She secured a $650,000 loan and $200,000 in private investment. The expansion was happening. And then came the phone call that knocked the wind from her lungs. It was a friend from the industry, well-meaning but tactless. "Bella, I thought you should know. Madison Pierce posted on Instagram. She's pregnant, says she's 14 weeks. Bella sat down slowly, the phone pressed to her ear. 14 weeks. The timeline scrolled through her mind with brutal clarity. Madison had gotten pregnant while Jordan was still living with Bella, still sleeping in their bed, still pretending to be her husband. "Bella, you there?" "I'm here." Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, distant. "Thank you for telling me." She ended the call and sat in the silence of her office. This should devastate her. The knowledge that Jordan had been intimate with Madison while barely touching Bella should break something fundamental inside her. Instead, what she felt was cold, clarifying and relief. "He really did choose her completely," she said aloud to the empty room. "Good. Now I know there's zero chance I'll ever question leaving." Grace appeared in the doorway as if summoned by instinct. "You heard. She's pregnant, 14 weeks. Grace's expression was fierce. "That baby ain't your problem, honey. You dodged a bullet." Bella looked at her friend, this woman who had become her anchor through the storm. "We talked about kids, Grace. Jordan and I. That was supposed to be our future. And now you get to have a different future. One where you're not tied to a man who doesn't know your worth." Grace pulled Bella into a hug. "You're going to be okay. More than okay. You're going to be magnificent." The Fashion Week Gala arrived like a test Bella hadn't studied for. The invitation had come months ago, back when she was still Mrs. Jordan Hayes, still trying to save a marriage that was already dead. She had debated skipping it, hiding from Manhattan's elite while her divorce played out in whispers and speculation. Grace had put an end to that idea immediately. You're wearing something stunning, and you're going to show every single person in that room that Isabella Morgan is just getting started. So Bella found herself standing before her bedroom mirror in a custom emerald gown that hugged every curve like a love letter to her own body. The dress was pure elegance and defiance, with a neckline that dipped just low enough to be daring and a slit that showed glimpses of leg when she moved. Her natural hair was styled in an elaborate updo that had taken her 2 hours to perfect, each curl a work of art. She looked powerful. She looked expensive. She looked like someone who had survived a war and come out stronger. The gala was held at one of Manhattan's most exclusive venues, all soaring ceilings and crystal chandeliers and the quiet hum of money meeting influence. Bella walked in alone, and the whispers started immediately. She felt eyes follow her across the room, heard her name ripple through conversations. But instead of the pity or scandal she had braced for, what she encountered was respect. Fashion editors stopped her to compliment her work. Designers she had styled approached to book future appointments. The industry, it seemed, had chosen sides, and they had chosen hers. She was talking with a photographer about an upcoming editorial shoot when she felt it. That prickle of awareness that comes from being watched. Bella turned, her champagne glass halfway to her lips, and saw them across the ballroom. Jordan and Madison. Madison's pregnancy was visible now, her hand resting on the curve of her belly in that universal gesture of expectant mothers everywhere. She wore pale pink, soft and feminine, and designed to showcase her condition. The Cartier bracelet caught the light on her wrist. The engagement ring sparkled on her finger. Jordan stood beside her, his hand possessive on her back, looking every inch the proud father-to-be. He was deep in conversation with someone Bella didn't recognize, his smile easy and false. And then he looked up. Their eyes met across the crowded room, across the wreckage of their marriage, across everything that had been and would never be again. The moment stretched. In Jordan's face, Bella saw guilt, regret, and something that might have been longing. For what, she couldn't say. For her? For the life they had planned? For the version of himself that hadn't yet made the choices that led him here? Madison saw the exchange. Her grip on Jordan's arm tightened, possessive and territorial. She smiled, bright and false, a woman who believed she had won some contest Bella hadn't known they were having. Bella held the gaze for 5 seconds. Then she smiled, slow and devastating, lifted her champagne glass in a mock toast, and turned away. The dismissal was complete, elegant, final. Grace materialized at her elbow. You okay, baby? I'm perfect. Bella's voice was steady. They look like they're wearing uncomfortable costumes. I'm wearing freedom. But later in the car service taking her home through Manhattan's glittering streets, Bella cried, not for Jordan. She was done crying for him. She cried for the family she had imagined, for the children she had wanted, for the future that had been stolen while she wasn't looking. By the time she reached her penthouse, the tears had dried. She stood at her window overlooking Central Park and made a promise to herself. She would build a new future, one where she wasn't waiting for someone else to value her, one where her worth was self-evident and non-negotiable. The universe, as if listening, chose that moment to deliver. The consultation request came through 3 days later. Mr. Sterling, 2 o'clock Thursday, allegedly booking services for his sister's wedding. Bella almost didn't take it. She was booked solid for the next 2 months, expanding faster than she could manage. But something made her say yes. Intuition? Fate. The hand of something larger than herself rearranging the pieces. Alexander Sterling walked into brilliance at exactly 2 o'clock, and Bella felt the air shift. He was tall, easily 6'2", with the kind of presence that didn't demand attention so much as quietly command it. His hair was that distinguished silver gray that some men achieved in their 40s, shot through with darker strands that suggested what color it had been. His eyes were blue-gray, the color of winter skies, and they focused on Bella with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. His suit was European cut, expensive without being ostentatious. His watch was understated platinum. Everything about him spoke of old money and older confidence. This was a man who had never needed to prove anything to anyone. Ms. Morgan? His voice carried just the slightest hint of something. New England boarding schools, perhaps, or inherited refinement. Thank you for fitting me into your schedule. His handshake was firm, his palm warm. Bella felt something electric pass between them and dismissed it as imagination. She was barely 3 months separated. She had no business noticing how a man's eyes crinkled when he smiled, or how his presence seemed to fill the entire salon. Of course, Mr. Sterling. How can I help you today? It's for my sister Victoria. She's getting married in Boston this spring. He settled into the consultation chair with easy grace. She won't be in New York until a few days before, and she's heard incredible things about your work. They spent the next hour discussing styles and techniques, but Bella found herself increasingly distracted by Alexander Sterling himself. He listened when she spoke, really listened, asking thoughtful questions about her creative process. When she showed him photographs of previous bridal work, he studied them with genuine interest. You're an artist, he observed, not just a stylist. There's a difference. There is. Bella was surprised by how much his recognition meant. I try to see what someone needs, not just what they ask for. Like a diamond cutter. Alexander's smile was slow and devastating. Finding the brilliance hidden in the rough stone, knowing exactly where to apply pressure to reveal what was always there. The metaphor hung between them, heavy with meaning neither acknowledged. Bella felt heat rise in her cheeks, a sensation she hadn't experienced in years. The consultation that should have lasted 30 minutes stretched to 90. They talked about art, about beauty, about the philosophy of transformation. Alexander spoke about his family's diamond business. 3 generations of sterling men learning to see value where others saw only potential. My grandfather started with a single stone he found as a boy in Arkansas, Alexander said, his eyes distant with memory. Spent his whole life teaching himself the craft. By the time I was born, we had workshops in Antwerp, suppliers across 3 continents. And you? Bella heard herself asking. What did he teach you? That pressure creates brilliance. Alexander's gaze returned to her, direct and warm. That the most beautiful things often come from the most difficult circumstances. That real value is inherent, not created. Something in Bella's chest loosened. This man, this stranger, was speaking a language she understood, the language of survival and transformation, of finding beauty in the breaking. I should confess something, Alexander said as he stood to leave, checking his watch with obvious reluctance. Victoria is perfectly capable of styling her own hair. She's been doing it for 40 years. Bella's eyebrows rose. Then why? I heard about the extraordinary Isabella Morgan from a friend, Lady Catherine Ashford, actually. She couldn't stop talking about you, your talent, your grace, your strength. He held her gaze steadily. I wanted to meet you. The admission should have felt presumptuous. Instead, it felt honest, refreshing in its directness. Would you have dinner with me? Alexander asked. No pretense, just 2 people enjoying good food and good conversation. Bella hesitated. She was separated, not divorced. Her life was a construction zone of legal battles and business expansion. She had no business getting involved with anyone, especially someone who looked at her like she was something precious. Mr. Sterling, I'm recently separated. It's complicated. Then let's keep it simple. His smile was understanding. Dinner, tomorrow night. No pressure, no expectations. Just a chance to continue this conversation in a setting with better wine. Bella surprised herself. Okay, yes. They arranged details. A small Italian restaurant in the West Village. 7:30. Nothing fancy, just dinner. After he left, Bella stood in the middle of her salon, staring at the space where he had been, and wondered what she had just agreed to. Grace appeared with a knowing smile. That man was fine, Grace pronounced, and more importantly, he looked at you like you hung the moon. It's just dinner. Keep telling yourself that, baby. But that night, as Bella tried on and rejected 6 different outfits, she admitted Grace was right. This felt like something terrifying and thrilling and completely unexpected. Alexander Sterling had walked into her salon asking for nothing and offering what felt like everything. Attention, interest, the sense that she was seen completely. She chose a deep blue dress that made her skin glow, paired with simple gold jewelry. Elegant but not trying too hard, confident but not defensive. The armor of a woman who was learning to be open again. The restaurant was intimate, all candlelight and exposed brick and the quiet murmur of other people's conversations. Alexander was already there, rising when she entered, his smile genuine and warm. You look beautiful, he said simply. No elaborate compliments, just truth offered freely. Thank you. Bella settled into her chair, accepted the wine menu, and felt something in her chest that might have been hope. The conversation flowed like they had known each other for years rather than days. Alexander spoke about his travels, the remote mines where the most remarkable stones were found, the eccentric collectors who commissioned impossible pieces. His passion for his work was evident, infectious. "There's this moment," he said, gesturing with his wineglass, "when you cut into a rough diamond and see the first flash of brilliance. All that pressure, all that time buried in darkness, and suddenly, there's light. That's what I'm always chasing. That reveal." "I know that feeling," Bella said. "When a client sits in my chair, sometimes they're so buried under other people's expectations. And then you do exactly the right thing, and they see themselves clearly for the first time." "Exactly." Alexander's eyes were intense. "You understand, most people think it's about surface beauty, but it's not. It's about recognition, helping someone see what was always true." They talked until the restaurant was closing, until the server was politely clearing throats and the candles had burned low. Alexander walked Bella to her car, and when he kissed her cheek goodbye, the touch lingered like a promise. "May I see you again?" he asked. "Yes," Bella said, no hesitation. "I'd like that very much." Over the next 6 weeks, Alexander Sterling became part of Bella's carefully reconstructed life. Coffee dates squeezed between client appointments. Museum visits where he taught her about gems at the Natural History Museum, pointing out inclusions in fire with the enthusiasm of someone sharing their first love. Long walks through Central Park, where conversations meandered from philosophy to childhood memories to dreams for the future. He met Grace, who gave him her stamp of approval with a meaningful look at Bella. He heard about the salon expansion and asked intelligent questions about her business model. He listened to her talk about the discrimination lawsuit that had funded her dreams and didn't flinch or change the subject. "You're remarkable," he said one evening as they walked along the Hudson, the city lights reflecting off water. "The way you've turned pain into purpose, it's extraordinary." "I didn't have much choice," Bella replied. "It was either let it destroy me or use it to build something better. There's always a choice." Alexander stopped walking, turned to face her. "You chose strength. Not everyone does." The first kiss happened in Central Park, rain falling in that soft spring way that made everything smell like beginnings. They had ducked under a tree for shelter, laughing and suddenly weren't laughing anymore. Alexander's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. "May I kiss you?" he asked, always asking, always seeking permission. Bella nodded, unable to speak. His lips met hers with a gentleness that somehow held intensity, a kiss that promised without demanding. When they broke apart, both breathless, Bella felt tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Me too," Alexander admitted. "But good things are often scary." 3 months into dating, he invited her to his loft in Soho. The space was pure Alexander, industrial bones with refined touches, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, a safe room for storing diamonds that looked like something from a heist movie. They had fallen into an easy rhythm of evenings together, dinners and conversations that stretched into the small hours. But tonight felt different, weighted with something unspoken. Over wine, Alexander set down his glass and met her eyes. "Bella, there's something I need to tell you. I want complete honesty between us." Her heart stuttered, old wounds making her brace for impact. "I was married," he continued, his voice careful. "My wife Caroline died 4 years ago." The story came slowly, painfully. They had met at Harvard, married young, built a life together, 12 years of partnership and love, a sailing accident off Martha's Vineyard, a sudden storm, a boat that capsized. Alexander had survived. Caroline hadn't. "I was supposed to check the weather reports," he said, his voice hollow with old guilt. "I didn't. I was distracted, and she paid for my carelessness with her life." Bella reached across the space between them, took his hand. "It was an accident, Alex. I know that logically, but knowing and feeling are different things." He looked at their joined hands. "I haven't been with anyone since. Couldn't imagine it. Didn't think I deserved to be happy after what happened." "And now?" Bella asked softly. "Now I've met you, and for the first time in 4 years, I want to try." His eyes found hers, vulnerable and hopeful. "You make me want to risk again." Bella's own tears fell freely. "I'm scared too. My marriage taught me that trust is fragile, that love isn't always enough." "Then we'll be scared together," Alexander said. And maybe that's enough. They made love that night with a tenderness born of shared wounds. Two people who had been broken differently, finding wholeness in each other's arms. Afterward, lying in his bed with Manhattan spread out below them, Bella felt something shift in her chest. Not the desperate need she had felt with Jordan, always trying to earn love. This was different, quieter, more certain. "I'm falling in love with you," she whispered into the darkness, "and it terrifies me." "I'm already in love with you," Alexander replied. "And yes, it's terrifying, but you're worth the fear." Everything was perfect. Bella's business was thriving. Her divorce was progressing. She had found someone who valued her completely. And then the news broke. Hayes Tech under SEC investigation for securities fraud. The headline blazed across every financial news site, every business channel. Jordan's face on Bloomberg, looking haggard and defensive. Accusations of misleading investors, inflating projections, insider trading. The stock that had been worth $147 per share collapsed to 31 in 2 days. And because Bella's name was still legally attached to his, because Manhattan society loved nothing more than watching the mighty fall, the reporters came for her too. They camped outside Brilliance. "Ms. Morgan, did you know about the fraud?" "Ms. Morgan, will you stand by your husband?" "Ms. Morgan, how much did you personally benefit from the illegal activities?" Some clients canceled, not many, but enough to notice. Women who couldn't afford to be associated with scandal, who valued their reputations more than their loyalty. Revenue dropped 25% in a single week. Jordan called. Bella stared at his name on her phone screen before answering with cold efficiency. "I need your help," he said without preamble. "A joint statement of support from you would help stabilize the stock, show investors that this is all a misunderstanding." Bella's laugh was sharp enough to cut. "You want me to lie for you? Publicly vouch for your integrity?" "Bella, please. For what we once had." "What we once had is exactly why I'll never help you." Her voice was ice. "You betrayed me personally. Now you want me to lie for you professionally? Absolutely not." She ended the call. Catherine Chen called minutes later. "The scandal might actually help your settlement," Catherine said with barely concealed satisfaction. "He's desperate for cash. He'll settle faster and for less fight just to make this go away." That should have felt like victory. Instead, it just felt exhausting. Early March brought Jordan to Brilliance, disheveled and desperate in a way that would have broken her 6 months ago. Grace tried to stop him at the door, but Bella heard the commotion and came out of her styling room. He looked terrible. Weight loss, suit rumpled, eyes red-rimmed. This was not the confident man who had told her she should be content with less. This was someone who had lost everything and finally understood what it meant. "What are you doing here, Jordan?" His voice cracked. "Please, Bella, just 5 minutes." Against her better judgment, she led him to the back office. Grace hovered protectively nearby. "The SEC froze my assets," Jordan said without preamble. "The company's bankrupt. I'm facing possible jail time." "I'm sorry to hear that." Bella meant it. She took no joy in his destruction. "Madison left me." This seemed to hurt him more than anything else. "The baby wasn't even mine. DNA test proved it. She was hedging her bets with her ex the whole time. She took the settlement money I'd given her and disappeared." "Jordan, why are you telling me this?" "Because you were real, Bella, the only real thing I had, and I threw you away for someone who was using me." Tears ran down his face without shame. "I was a fool. Please, give me another chance." Alexander appeared in the doorway, picking Bella up for lunch as planned. He took in the scene, assessed Jordan with a single glance, and moved to stand beside Bella with quiet solidarity. Jordan saw him, saw the way Bella leaned slightly into Alexander's presence, and something broke in his expression. "You've moved on." "I have." Bella's voice was gentle but final. "I'm with someone who values me. But even if I wasn't, I would never go back to you, Jordan." "I loved you," he whispered, "but you loved your ego more." Bella stood. "I hope you figure yourself out. I hope you find peace. But that's not my responsibility anymore. Goodbye, Jordan." He left, shoulders bowed under the weight of consequences. Bella stood shaking in Alexander's arms. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. "I am." And she realized it was true. "I don't hate him anymore. I just pity him." That night, wrapped in Alexander's embrace in her penthouse that was finally completely hers, Bella looked out over Manhattan and felt something settle in her chest. Not the end of her story, just the end of a chapter. The transformation was complete. Isabella Morgan had risen from betrayal stronger, clearer, more certain of her worth. She had built an empire, survived a war, and found love on the other side of heartbreak. The best was yet to come. The night after Jordan's desperate appearance at Brilliance, Bella sat with Alexander in her penthouse, the city lights sprawling below them like scattered diamonds. She had been holding herself together all day, maintaining her composure in front of Grace and clients. But now, alone with someone who had proven he could hold her pain, the walls came down. What if I'm damaged? The words burst from her before she could stop them. What if Jordan broke something in me that can't be fixed? What if I can't fully trust anyone again? Alexander set down his wineglass and turned to face her completely. His eyes, that winter sky blue-gray, held nothing but understanding. Bella, healing isn't linear. You're not broken. You're recovering from trauma. There's a difference. But what if I hurt you? Her voice cracked. What if I'm so scared of being betrayed again that I sabotage something real? He pulled her close, and Bella let herself collapse into his chest, the tears finally coming. Not the angry tears of betrayal or the bitter tears of divorce proceedings. These were the tears of someone learning to be vulnerable again, learning that opening your heart after it's been shattered takes more courage than keeping it locked away. Alexander stroked her hair, his touch gentle and patient. After Caroline died, I went to therapy for 2 years. Do you know what I learned? Bella shook her head against his chest. That carrying guilt and pain doesn't honor the dead or the past. Living fully does. His voice was quiet but certain. You loved Jordan with everything you had. He squandered that gift. But that doesn't mean you're incapable of love. It means he was incapable of receiving it. They stayed like that for a long time, two wounded people finding wholeness in each other's arms. When they made love that night, it was different from before. Deeper. A conversation held in touches and sighs, in the way Alexander whispered her name like a prayer, in the way Bella finally let herself believe that this could be real. Afterward, wrapped in sheets that smelled of them both, Bella traced patterns on Alexander's chest and spoke words that terrified her. I'm falling in love with you, completely, and it scares me to death. Alexander caught her hand, brought it to his lips. I'm already in love with you, have been since that first consultation when you talked about revealing the queen in everyone. He smiled against her palm. I looked at you and thought, she has no idea she's describing herself. I'm terrified, Bella whispered. Me too. His honesty was a gift. But you're worth the fear. We're worth the fear. April brought spring to New York and new chapters to Bella's carefully reconstructed life. Alexander's sister, Victoria, flew in from Boston, ostensibly to finally book that wedding styling appointment that had been a beautiful lie. Instead, she came to meet the woman who had brought her brother back to life. Victoria Sterling was 38, an architect with her brother's sharp eyes and a warmth that immediately put Bella at ease. They met for dinner at Bella's penthouse, and within an hour it felt like they had known each other for years. You have to understand, Victoria said, gesturing with her wineglass. After Caroline died, Alex just shut down. He was functioning but not living, going through the motions but never really present. Victoria, Alexander said with gentle warning. No, she needs to know. Victoria turned to Bella with fierce affection. I haven't seen him smile like this in 4 years. Really smile. The kind that reaches his eyes. That's because of you. Bella felt tears prick her eyes. He makes me remember who I am, who I was before I forgot. Then you're both lucky, Victoria said simply. Not everyone gets a second chance at this. The following week, Bella brought Alexander to the Bronx to meet her parents. The contrast between his world and hers was stark. Her childhood home was small, working class, filled with the kind of warmth that came from family rather than expensive furnishings. Her mother, Diane, answered the door, took one look at Alexander and smiled. So you're the one making my baby girl happy. Her father, Marcus, had been absent for most of Bella's childhood, returned 5 years ago seeking forgiveness and slowly rebuilding trust. He was protective now in a way he had no right to be, and Bella loved him for trying. What are your intentions with my daughter? He asked Alexander over dinner, his tone only half joking. Alexander met his gaze steadily. Sir, I intend to cherish her, support her dreams, and never make her feel like she needs to be less than she is to be loved. The answer satisfied Marcus, but it was Diane who pulled Bella aside later, into her childhood bedroom with its outdated posters and teenage dreams. That man sees you, baby girl, Diane said quietly. Really sees you. Not who he wants you to be, who you are. I'm scared, Mama. Bella's voice was small. What if it falls apart like it did with Jordan? Then you survive it like you survived Jordan. Diane took her daughter's face in her hands. But don't rob yourself of joy because you're afraid of pain. That's not living, that's hiding. By May, 9 months after Jordan had walked out and 3 months after their relationship had begun, Alexander was planning something. Bella could sense it in the way he watched her, the secretive conversations he had with Victoria, the nervous energy that buzzed around him. What she didn't know was that he was wrestling with timing. His business needed him in Belgium for a major acquisition. 2 months of intensive negotiations in Antwerp, managing the purchase of a historic diamond workshop that would expand sterling operations significantly. He consulted Grace during one of his visits to Brilliance, pulling her aside while Bella was with a client. "Is she ready?" he asked without preamble. "For me to propose." Grace studied him with those eyes that missed nothing. "She loves you, but she's terrified. The question is, are you patient enough to prove she's right to take the risk?" "I have this." Alexander pulled out a small velvet box, "sitting in my safe. My grandmother's ring. 2 carats, flawless. Been in the family for 70 years. I was saving it for something special." Grace opened the box, gasped softly at the diamond that caught light like captured starfire. "That's not a ring, honey. That's a promise." "I want to give it to her before I leave for Belgium," Alexander said. "Show her I'm committed even through the distance." "Then do it," Grace said firmly. "That girl needs someone who pursues her, who doesn't make her guess or wonder or doubt." The Soho Loft rooftop was transformed when Bella arrived that evening. String lights created constellations overhead. Candles flickered in hurricane glasses. A table was set for two with the kind of simple elegance that spoke of thought rather than expense. Alexander stood waiting, and the look on his face made Bella's breath catch. Nervous, hopeful, completely open in a way that mirrored her own vulnerability. "What's all this?" she asked, though her heart was already racing, already knowing. "Sit with me," he said, pulling out her chair. "Please." They ate slowly, conversation flowing as it always did between them. But there was weight to the evening, a sense of something building toward inevitable conclusion. Finally, as the city lights blazed below and the spring air carried the scent of possibility, Alexander pushed back from the table and took Bella's hand. "I spent 4 years believing I'd used up my chance at love," he began, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "After Caroline died, I convinced myself that happiness was something other people deserved. Not me. I was too guilty, too broken, too afraid to risk that kind of loss again." Bella's throat tightened, tears already forming. "Then you walked into my world, brilliant, strong, beautiful, resilient, every single thing I didn't know I was looking for." Alexander reached into his pocket, pulled out the velvet box. "You taught me that love after loss is possible, that taking risks is worth it, that pressure creates brilliance." He opened the box and the diamond caught light from 1,000 sources. Not the biggest stone Bella had ever seen, but something about it was perfect, flawless, eternal. Like you, this diamond formed under impossible pressure. And like you, that pressure only revealed what was always there. Brilliance, beauty, unshakable worth. Alexander's voice caught. "Isabella Morgan, will you marry me?" The pause that followed lasted forever and no time at all. Bella looked at the ring, at the man offering it, at the life stretching before them, full of uncertainty and promise. She thought of Jordan, of betrayal, of learning the hard way that love could be weaponized by the wrong person. And then she thought of Alexander, of patience and honesty and the way he looked at her like she was the answer to questions he hadn't known he was asking. "Yes." The word came out, choked with tears. "God, yes. I'm terrified, but yes." His kiss tasted of salt and champagne and relief so profound it made them both shake. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, Bella stared at it through tear-blurred vision and felt something settle in her chest. Not the end of fear, just the beginning of faith. "I leave for Belgium in 2 weeks," Alexander said softly. 2 months of negotiations. "But I wanted you to have this first. Proof that I'm not going anywhere, that this is real." 2 months, Bella repeated, already feeling the weight of separation. "We'll talk every day. Video calls. I'll flood your phone with terrible pictures of Antwerp architecture." He smiled against her hair. "And then I'll come home to you." Those 2 weeks passed in a blur of joy and wedding planning, and the quiet terror of watching Alexander pack for an extended absence. They had been inseparable for 3 months. 2 months apart felt impossible. The morning he left for the airport, Bella held him too tight and too long. "Hey," Alexander pulled back to look at her face. "This isn't goodbye. It's see you soon." "I know," Bella tried to smile, "and being ridiculous." "You're being human." He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. 2 months. Then I'm home, and we start planning our forever. But distance, Bella learned, had a way of amplifying every doubt. The first week was fine. They talked every night, long video calls where Alexander showed her his hotel room, the workshop he was negotiating for, the rain-slicked streets of Antwerp. His excitement was infectious. The second week brought strain. Time differences meant missed calls. Alexander's negotiations were intense, demanding his full attention. Their conversations grew shorter, more distracted. By the third week, Bella's old wounds were bleeding through. Jordan had pulled away just like this. Started with distance, ended with betrayal. The patterns were too familiar. Her therapist would have called it triggered trauma response. Bella just called it terrifying. "You seem distant," she said during one of their calls, hating the neediness in her own voice. Alexander looked exhausted, his eyes red from lack of sleep. "I'm sorry, love. This acquisition is more complicated than we thought. The family selling has internal disputes. It's taking all my focus. Let me help. Talk to me about it." "This is my problem, Bella. I'll handle it." His tone was gentle but dismissive, the same tone Jordan had used when shutting her out. Something cold settled in Bella's stomach. "Are you pulling away from me?" "What? No, Bella, I'm just stressed. This deal is worth millions. I can't let personal distractions interfere." Distractions. The word landed like a slap. "I need to go," Bella said, her voice tight. "Good luck with your negotiations." She ended the call before he could respond, sat in her penthouse staring at the engagement ring that suddenly felt heavy, and wondered if she was making the same mistake twice. The fight that followed 2 days later was inevitable. Alexander called, trying to explain his stress level, his fear of failing this acquisition, his need to compartmentalize to function. Bella heard only echoes of Jordan's excuses. "If you can't let me in during hard times, what's the point?" she demanded, anger covering fear. "Marriage is supposed to be partnership, not you handling everything alone while I sit here wondering if you're pulling away." "I'm trying to protect you from this stress," Alexander said, his own frustration finally showing. "This deal is falling apart. I've invested $3 million. If it fails, I lose everything." "And you didn't think to tell me that?" Bella's voice rose. "You didn't think I'd want to support you through it? I didn't want to burden you. I'm not some fragile thing that needs protecting, Alex. I'm your partner. Or I thought I was." The call ended badly, both of them hurt and defensive. Bella spent 2 days spiraling, convinced she had been right all along. Love wasn't worth the risk. Trust was a trap. She was better off alone. Grace found her crying in the salon after hours and delivered truth with the bluntness only true friends could manage. "You're punishing Alexander for Jordan's sins," Grace said flatly. "Alex is communicating poorly, I'll grant you that, but he's not betraying you. He's struggling and trying not to burden you because he thinks that's what strength looks like." "How do I know?" Bella's voice was small. "How do I know he's not going to end up like Jordan?" "You don't. That's what faith is, baby. Believing even when you can't see proof." Grace pulled her close. "But here's what I do know. Jordan hid from you. Alex is being honest about struggling. Those are not the same things." Alexander called the next morning, his voice rough. "Bella, I'm sorry. You were right. I was trying to protect you, but what I was really doing was shutting you out. That's not fair, and it's not partnership." "I'm sorry too," Bella admitted. "I was projecting my past onto our present. That's not fair to you either." "Come to Belgium," Alexander said suddenly. "The deal is done. We lost the acquisition. $3 million gone. But I don't care about that right now. I care about you. Come see my world. Meet my family. Let me show you I'm all in, even when things are falling apart." The flight to Brussels, the train to Antwerp, the taxi to the hotel where Alexander was staying, all passed in a blur of nerves and anticipation. When she finally saw him waiting in the lobby, looking exhausted and worried and heartbreakingly hopeful, Bella ran to him. They held each other in that hotel lobby, crying and apologizing and promising to do better, to communicate more, to trust harder, to remember that they were on the same team. Alexander took her to meet his extended family. His father, retired but still sharp-eyed. His mother, warm and welcoming. Cousins who ran the Antwerp operations. They embraced Bella completely, showing her the workshops where 3 generations of sterling men had learned to see beauty in rough stones. "This is my world," Alexander said, showing her the failed acquisition, the workshop they had lost. Not always successful, not always clean, but always honest. He introduced her as his fiancée with such pride, such certainty, that Bella felt her last defenses crumble. This man had lost $3 million, and his biggest concern was proving himself to her. He had invited her into his failure, his vulnerability, his fear. That night, in his hotel room overlooking Antwerp's medieval architecture, they made love with an intensity born of almost losing each other. Afterward, wrapped in sheets and each other, Bella spoke truth into the darkness. I was terrified you were going to leave me like Jordan did. I was terrified I was going to fail you like I failed Caroline. Alexander's admission was quiet, like I'd lose someone else I loved because I wasn't careful enough. We're both scared. Yes, but maybe that's okay. Maybe fear means we understand how precious this is. They returned to New York together, a united front, stronger for having been tested. The wedding planning resumed with new energy, new certainty. They had been through fire and come out forged into something unbreakable. September arrived with the kind of perfect weather that only happened in movies. The ceremony was at Brooklyn Botanic Garden, Bella's choice. She had come from the Bronx, built herself up from nothing, and she wanted to marry Alexander in a place that represented growth and natural beauty. The morning of the wedding, Bella stood in the bridal suite surrounded by women who had watched her transform. Her mother adjusting the veil with trembling hands. Grace, serving as matron of honor, fierce and proud. Victoria, who had flown in days earlier and bonded with Bella's family immediately. The dress was custom ivory silk with gold embroidery inspired by African patterns, a celebration of her heritage, her journey, her refusal to be anything other than exactly who she was. Her natural hair was styled in an elaborate updo that had taken 3 hours, each curl a work of art, crowned with tiny gold pins that caught the light. Look at you, Diane breathed, tears streaming. My baby, a queen. Bella looked at herself in the mirror and saw not the broken woman Jordan had left behind, but someone who had been shattered and rebuilt herself stronger. Someone who had learned her worth, claimed her crown, and refused to settle for anything less than the love she deserved. I'm ready, she said, and meant it completely. The garden was transformed. White chairs arranged on grass still green despite the advancing season, flowers blooming in defiant beauty, string quartet playing softly. And at the altar, Alexander Sterling in a navy suit, his face transformed when he saw her. Bella walked down the aisle with both parents, one on each arm, past friends and clients and the life she had built with her own hands, toward a future that had seemed impossible 6 months ago. When she reached the altar, Alexander took her hands and she felt the tremor in his grip. He was as nervous as she was, as hopeful, as certain that this was right. Grace, ordained specifically for this occasion, smiled at them both. Love is choosing someone every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. The vows were brief, but weighted with everything they had survived to reach this moment. Alexander spoke of learning to love after loss, of finding someone who made him believe in second chances. Bella spoke of discovering her worth, of refusing to settle, of being brave enough to trust again. You didn't complete me, she said, her voice steady. You complemented the complete woman I already was, and that makes all the difference. They exchanged rings, his grandmother's diamond now accompanied by a simple gold band forged from Colombian gold, symbols of family and future intertwined. I now pronounce you husband and wife, Grace proclaimed. You may kiss your bride. The kiss-away was passionate and joyful and promised forever. Their guests erupted in cheers. Bella pulled back from Alexander's embrace, laughing and crying simultaneously, and felt like the luckiest woman alive. The reception was in the garden pavilion, all golden light and celebration. Speeches were made. Grace's was fierce and loving, talking about watching Bella transform from broken to brilliant. Victoria's was witty and warm, welcoming Bella into the Sterling family with open arms. Bella danced with her father, with Alexander's father, with Grace. She laughed with friends and clients who had supported her through the divorce. She ate cake and drank champagne and felt the kind of joy she had forgotten existed. And then, during a lull in the festivities, she saw him. Jordan stood at the garden fence, not trying to enter, but watching from the periphery. Gaunt, humbled, a ghost of the man he had been. Their eyes met across the garden, and Bella felt nothing. No anger, no pain. Just a distant sort of pity for someone who had lost everything through his own choices. Excuse me, she murmured to Alexander. I'll be right back. He understood immediately, his hand squeezing hers in support. Do you want me to come with you? No, this is something I need to do alone. She walked to the fence in her wedding gown, feeling like a warrior in silk and lace. Jordan's eyes were red-rimmed, his suit rumpled in a way that would have been unthinkable a year ago. You look beautiful, he said quietly, like the queen you always were. Jordan, what are you doing here? I had to see you, had to witness you happy. His voice cracked. And to tell you that you were right. about everything. He looked smaller somehow, diminished by consequence and regret. I lost everything, the company, Madison, my parents' respect, everything. And all I can think about is how I had you and threw you away because I was too insecure to handle being with someone extraordinary. Bella felt compassion stir, not love, never that again, but the kind of kindness you extend to broken things. Jordan, I forgive you. The words came easier than she expected. Not for you, for me. I needed to let go of the anger to move forward. He's lucky, Jordan gestured toward the reception, toward Alexander waiting patiently. I'm the lucky one. Bella's smile was genuine. I hope you find peace, Jordan. I hope you learn from this. I hope you find someone who's right for you, but that person was never me. I know that now. His tears fell freely. Too late. But I know. Goodbye, Jordan. The finality in her voice was gentle but absolute. She turned and walked back toward her husband, toward her future, toward the life she had built from the ashes of betrayal. Behind her, Jordan disappeared into the Brooklyn evening, a chapter finally, completely closed. Alexander met her halfway, searching her face for distress. You okay? I'm perfect. And she was. That was closure I didn't know I needed. They returned to their reception, to dancing and laughter, and the celebration of love that had been tested and found true. As the evening wore on and the stars came out over Brooklyn, Bella stood with Alexander looking over the garden where they had pledged their lives to each other. Any regrets? He asked, pulling her close. Not one. Bella leaned into his embrace. Every step, even the painful ones, led me here. To me, Alexander said with satisfaction. To us, Bella corrected. To partnership. To choosing each other every time. The final image of their wedding night was them dancing alone in the garden pavilion. Everyone else gone home. Just two people swaying to music only they could hear. A queen who had remembered her crown. A king who ruled beside her, not over her. 18 months later, Bella stood at the grand opening of Brilliance Academy, the training program that had gone from dream to reality. 3 locations now: Upper East Side flagship, Harlem community focus, downtown Brooklyn artistic hub. And now this, a comprehensive education center where women who couldn't afford traditional paths could learn, grow, and transform. She was visibly pregnant, 7 months along, her hand resting on the curve of her belly. Alexander beside her, his hand covering hers, both of them waiting for their daughter, who would be born into a world where her mother had built an empire and her father saw beauty in unexpected places. The first class was graduating. 20 women who had been given opportunity and seized it with both hands. Bella watched them receive certificates and felt pride that had nothing to do with money or fame and everything to do with lifting others as she climbed. Mrs. Ashford, still her most loyal client, cut the ribbon. To Isabella Morgan Sterling, the queen who built an empire and shared her crown. That evening in the penthouse that was finally completely home, Bella and Alexander stood at the window overlooking Central Park. The city lights twinkled like promises below them. Any regrets, Mrs. Sterling? Alexander asked, his hand on her belly feeling their daughter kick. Bella laughed. About hyphenating my name? Never. Morgan Sterling sounds like someone who conquers worlds. You know what I mean. Not one regret. She turned to face him. Everything. Even Jordan's betrayal, even the pain. It all led me here. To you, to our baby. To this life where I don't have to shrink myself to be loved. She's lucky, Alexander said, patting her belly gently. She'll have you as a role model. She'll know she never has to make herself smaller for anyone, Bella said fiercely. She'll know her worth from day one. They stood together, two people who had found each other in the wreckage of their previous lives and built something beautiful from the broken pieces. Outside, Manhattan pulsed with life and possibility. Inside, a family was being born. Bella looked at her reflection in the window, saw a woman who was confident, joyful, complete. Not because a man had made her whole, but because she had remembered she always had been. The engagement ring on her finger caught the light, but it was just a symbol. The real diamond, the one forged under pressure and polished by pain, was her. She had always been a queen. She had just needed to remember how to wear her crown and find a king who wanted to rule beside her, celebrating her light instead of trying to dim it. The story that had begun with betrayal ended with triumph. Not because the villain was punished, though he had been. Not because justice prevailed, though it had. But because Isabella Morgan had refused to let someone else's failure to see her value convince her she had none. She had built her kingdom, claimed her crown, and lived happily ever after in a way that had nothing to do with fairy tales and everything to do with choice. The choice to believe she deserved better. The choice to build better. The choice to be unapologetically and magnificently herself. Outside her window, New York City sparkled like scattered diamonds, full of other stories, other transformations, other queens waiting to remember their crowns. But tonight, in this moment, Bella's story was complete. A diamond formed under pressure, polished by pain, brilliant beyond measure. The queen had remembered herself, and the kingdom celebrated.